This is podcast 1 for Honors 391D, Institutionalizing the Geek for Professor Russ Worm's class. This is Steve McKinley, I'm Nick Stangas, and this is Benjamin Murphy. So, we're going to be talking about 3 topics in this podcast, the first being Machina, the second being Call of Duty, and the third, women in comics.
To start off, Machina is a fun comic book or comic series about a civil engineer named Mitchell 100 who gains the power to communicate with machines after a mysterious device, perhaps alien, we don't know, explodes under the Brooklyn Bridge when he's investigating it. It starts off like a traditional action comic, but soon reveals itself to be a little bit more political in nature, as it covers topics as widely ranging as gay marriage, racism, political rights of people, censorship. It really covers the entire range of things. And this first podcast, I'd like to focus a little bit on engineers in comics, Mitchell 100 being one of the few main character engineers. So perhaps, and being an engineer in comics would make you react differently to situations, as I felt perhaps Mitchell did. Other notable engineers being Tony Stark from Iron Man, Lucius Fox from the Batman series, of course Dilbert, and the XKCD comics is a lot about engineering and computer science. What do you guys think about engineers in comics? Do you think that they have any predisposed notions or predisposed actions?
I don't know, I really like the character of Tony Stark. I mean, he just seems like a really big, nerd. He goes around, he doesn't really have any powers, but he has lots of money. And he just goes and he builds himself a high-tech piece of equipment and goes and kicks ass with it. It's pretty much a nerd's dream.
Yeah, that's true. Same with Lucius Fox. You just got a lot of money, you just go make something with it, try to do the world some good.
But Tony Stark doesn't even have, like, Batman's background. Like,
That's
Batman
true.
lost his parents. Tony Stark is just doing this because he feels like it.
I thought it was
wants to do some good.
I thought it was to do good in the face of his father's evil and his company's evil, making weapons. I thought that was what it was about. But I don't know, maybe. What do you think, Nick?
I think the person I can relate to most is probably Lucius Fox. I think that his vision and what he does probably represents the best type of engineers in that type of scenario.
Okay. So, engineers also tend to have a more analytical approach to things, and I found that evidence in... So, we keep going, the light down.
It
does that? I can't help it.
So,
Keep going.
let's note that out.
We got some problems.
Having some technical difficulties as our light above us just went out. I'm going to rectify that for you shortly.
We're on a good roll, though.
It's so difficult to move.
I don't think that's going to really make a difference.
Okay.
The tournaments.
We'll just have a title roll, so it just goes to no lighting.
So, the main focus for my project is going to be the Call of Duty series, specifically Modern Warfare 2. Modern Warfare 2 is the newest game in the series made by Activision, and is a direct sequel to last year's game, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. For the storyline, it basically picks up where the last one left off, and you pretty much follow different types of soldiers. They could be a ranger from the U.S. Army or SAS soldier, stuff like that. But the points that I want to touch on are specifically the online experience you have when you play games like this one, the appeal for these games, and also some specifics like the no Russian missions, stuff like that. Ben?
I don't know, I really like the online play is what I really think it is. Where in most first-person shooters, like in the reading we had this week, where you don't have like a real tactics you need to use in order to fight. But in online mode, you can converse with your teammates and use real strategy against your opponents, who are also adapting to the way you act.
And that would be the idea, but usually it just devolves into some sort of frag fest. People going nuts everywhere.
For games that like SOCOM, there was really a strategy that you'd use the microphone to your advantage, but the Call of Duty series is really just morphed into a run and gun, every man for himself type of thing, regardless of whether or not it's a team-based game or just for yourself.
It feels more like the old style of FPS, the fast-paced, like Quake 3 arena, which isn't necessarily bad. There's definitely a place out there for those games. It's just not as involved and not as strategic as it could be.
There's definitely far less strategy than the games that I used to play, but that's sort of the appeal to these type of games, where you can go on any time of night, just play for a few hours, have a lot of fun. You don't really need to have any type of strategy. You play for yourself. You just kill people and have fun. And that's
Kill people and have fun.
pretty much the biggest
motto
appeal of
the
these
thing, yeah.
games.
But I mean, if you're not going to use strategy and talk to your teammates, then why bother having a chat option at all?
To yell at your teammates.
Oh.
I mean, that's one of the bigger problems with the microphone. It's pretty much only used for racial slurs, epithets, to be annoying. People like to just play music in the background or scream the entire time, which is also where the mute function comes in handy. But the microphones definitely aren't used to their advantage as they were in previous strategy games.
Yes.
Well, my topic is women in comics, and I was going to particularly focus upon the series Why the Last Man, which is written by Brian K. Vaughan and printed under the DC Vertigo imprint. It's a comic about where a mysterious plague wipes out every male mammal on the planet. So, except for one man and his pet monkey, Ampersand. So he and his companions, one is a secret agent from the U.S. government, 355, and a biogeneticist, Dr. Mann, travel around the world looking for answers and also for Yorick's lost fiancée. So, it's a very interesting series because it just tells how he meets several women during his travels and how they all cope differently with losing all the men in their life. Some, there's a community full of ex-cons that have the nicest town that he's actually seen in years. They have running power, running farms where most of the rest of the U.S. doesn't have anything. Everything's in shambles. So, how do you think that the women losing all the men in the world, how do you think it affects them?
And after reading a bunch of comic books, I feel like each comic series has a certain number of roles that need to be filled. If you know what I'm saying, there's always the tough guy, there's always the sensitive person, and in this case, you're forced to put women in almost all of those roles except for one in this case.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's really the perfect example for your topic here, because everybody needs to be portrayed by a woman. And you see now this new interaction of women to women entirely.
Even Yorick needs to pretend to be a woman in order to get around.
Most times, yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting juxtaposition in that the women pretty much need to take on every role in society, a lot of which men would usually be leading. So there's a woman president, there's pretty much a woman like the secret agent that Ben mentioned, there's women doctors, all that stuff, but they really have to come to the forefront and take a predominant role in these type of things. And you get the type of cases, there's a group called Women of the Amazon who are pretty much trying to be the brute force killers as women. They cut off one of their breasts as initiation, and it really just, the comic encompasses all of the type of roles, but they all have to be taken up by women. It's very interesting.
In the same parallels, the Daughters of the Amazon, there's the Sons of Arizona, who was like the male analog, or the women analog to the male militant force out west in Arizona, which is this group of hicks that think it's some sort of government conspiracy.
I mean, really, the series is everything. There's robots, monkeys, pirates,
Mm-hmm.
spacemen.
Oh yeah.
It's
Submarines.
exactly.
It's great.
But there's just some interesting facts that point out that you wouldn't think about. Every submarine in the world would sink except for those run by Australia, Finland, and I think Sweden, because those are the only countries in the world that have subs that are piloted by women.
Mm-hmm.
Same with, there's a stat about pilots that almost all the planes would go down because they're predominantly male pilots.
Yeah.
Any truck driver, shipping,
Yep.
is shut down. It's
Yeah.
just
Anything that would be male is now gone, and that's been refilled by a female position.
strange though. Agriculture, still 51% of the agricultural workforce is up and running.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was our first episode of podcast number 1.
Still don't have a title.
No title for this episode.
So, I'm Nick Stangas.
Steve McKinley.
Ben Murphy.